Everything changed in a matter of seconds this offseason. A sudden transaction, a quiet announcement. Look, we all know how the NFL offseason works, right? In the grand theater of professional football, the spring and summer months are traditionally a complete frenzy of hundreds of millions of dollars. We see these massive blockbuster trades for diva wide receivers. We see record-breaking, market-resetting contracts handed out to franchise quarterbacks. We watch elite edge rushers secure absolute generational wealth in the blink of an eye. Those are the flashy moves. Those are the transactions that completely dominate the headlines, the late-night debate shows, and the social media algorithms. But in the shadows of all that multi-million-dollar chaos, the New York Giants made a move that slipped completely under the radar for most casual fans. But for those of us who actually study the tape, for those who understand the agonizing, razor-thin margins between a deep playoff run and a miserable losing season, this wasn't just a minor signing. This was a seismic shift. Welcome to NFL Nexus. This is your home for the deepest, most cinematic breakdowns in football. If you want to understand the game beneath the game, the strategies that are actually winning championships, hit that subscribe button right now. Go ahead and like this explainer, drop a comment down below with your real thoughts on the Giants offseason, and hey, if you want to support the channel's deep dives and help us keep doing what we do, consider becoming an NFL Nexus channel member today. Because today, we are breaking down a thrilling tactical shift for the New York Giants that has been hiding in plain sight. We're going to look closely at the forensics of a signing that fundamentally alters the entire geometry of the football field.
I want you to really think about that for a moment. What if the most dangerous, lethal weapon on the entire football field is the exact one you never ever want to actually use? Historically speaking, going all the way back to the very dawn of professional football, the punter has been the most disrespected, overlooked position on the entire 53-man roster. Sending out the punt team is traditionally viewed as an admission of absolute failure. It literally means your offense stalled out. Your highly paid superstar quarterback missed a crucial read on third down, or maybe your offensive line completely collapsed under a blitz package. Whatever the reason, the drive is dead, the momentum is gone, and waving the white flag on fourth down is your only remaining option. But what if we completely reframe how we view that failure? What if instead of just surrendering and timidly giving the ball back to the other guys, that exact moment becomes a highly targeted, aggressive offensive strike against the opposing team's starting field position? Everything changed when the New York Giants finally addressed this brutally overlooked position. They didn't just bring in a guy to kick a piece of leather. They brought in a specialist, a literal weapon. And to truly understand why this matters so much to the fate of their upcoming season, we have to look closely at the hidden yardage that dictates the flow and the outcome of every single NFL game.
We have to get this straight right now. Punting isn't just giving the ball away. It is a calculated, incredibly high-stakes battle for survival. It is the strategic, intentional act of drastically worsening your opponent's starting field position. In the film room, coaches and scouts call this flipping the field. When you successfully flip the field, you are literally suffocating an opposing offense before their center even snaps the football. You are taking a dynamic, high-scoring, dangerous offensive unit and plunging them into the deep, dark water of their own territory. You are forcing an opposing quarterback to march out there and stare down 85, sometimes 90 yards of hostile turf just to get into the end zone. And the psychological toll this takes, it is immense. When an offense is backed up against their own goal line, the entire environment changes. The crowd noise becomes absolutely deafening. The offensive tackles on the edge suddenly can't hear the quarterback's snap count. And we all know what happens next, right? Silent counts lead to false starts. False starts back you up even further. That panic leads to offensive holding in the end zone, which results in a safety, 2 points for the defense, and they get the ball right back. Flipping the field is not a luxury in this league. In the modern, hyper-competitive, analytics-driven NFL, it is a brutal necessity for survival. So, keeping all of that in mind, let's look at how the Giants brass approached this massive problem. They realized they needed a complete philosophy change. The front office took a very long, very hard look in the mirror after last season. They sat down, they analyzed the tape, they dug deep into the analytics, and the data revealed a glaring, fatal vulnerability. They were bleeding massive amounts of hidden yardage in the third phase of the game. They needed a massive systemic overhaul of their special teams unit from the ground up, and they knew without a doubt it had to start with the leg doing the kicking. Look, when your punter is a liability, you don't just lose 10 or 15 yards here and there, you lose entire football games in the margins. You lose the war of attrition. The Giants knew that relying on emergency replacements or inconsistent, unpredictable legs was a fatal flaw in their roster construction. The field position game gets completely, totally lost when your punter cannot execute his job with absolute robotic consistency. So they were ruthless. They released Jamie Gillan, completely clearing the deck and making a statement. And then they aggressively targeted and signed all-pro caliber 5-year veteran Jordan Stout. Now I want to be clear here. This wasn't a minor transaction that you just scroll past on Twitter. The Giants handed Stout a 3-year, $12.3 million contract. Let that number really sink in for a second. Over $12 million for a punter.
That is a massive financial statement from the organization. It proves mathematically that they view him not as a special teams afterthought, but as a core, load-bearing pillar of their overall defensive strategy. And there is a vital piece of context here that absolutely cannot be ignored. This specific move reunited Stout with the new Giants head coach, John Harbaugh. Now remember, Harbaugh literally cut his teeth in the NFL as a special teams coordinator. For nearly a decade before he ever became a head coach, Harbaugh lived, breathed, and slept special teams. He understands the profound value of a punter more than almost any other head coach in the entire league. Harbaugh didn't just want a punter, he wanted his punter, the exact weapon he personally helped forge and develop back in Baltimore.
Now, what's really fascinating about this next sequence of data is how it illustrates Stout's leg not just as an athletic asset, but as literal high-tech artillery.
When you strip away all the emotion of a football game, the roaring crowds, the dramatic storylines, you are left with the cold, hard math. And the math behind Jordan Stout's leg is simply staggering. Last season, across 53 total punts, Stout averaged a booming 50.1 yards per kick. I want you to close your eyes and visualize that physical distance. From the exact moment the ball leaves his foot, it is traveling half the length of an entire football field, on average, every single time. The sheer explosive kinetic power required to consistently launch a football that far into the sky is incredible. But you also have to consider the environment he's about to play in. MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford is completely notorious for the Meadowlands swirl. It's this chaotic, completely unpredictable wind pattern that knocks down field goals and brutally shanks punts on a weekly basis. Driving a football 50 yards through that specific air density, cutting through that wind, requires an elite, incredibly rare level of rotational force. But here is the catch. Distance alone is a very dangerous game. In the NFL, if you just kick the ball far without the proper trajectory, you are just serving up a massive return opportunity. You are out-kicking your own coverage. A 50-yard punt doesn't mean absolutely anything if the return man easily catches it and brings it right back 30 yards, right? Which brings us to the most terrifying, game-breaking part of Stout's game.
159. This right here is the jaw-dropping part of this equation. Despite that massive, booming 50.1-yard distance on his kicks, Jordan Stout allowed an impossibly low 159 total return yards for the entire season. Just think about the sheer statistical impossibility of that number for a second. Over 53 separate punts. Fast, lethal, Olympic speed return specialists waiting underneath every single one of them, desperate to make a game-changing play. And yet, across an entire grueling, physically exhausting NFL campaign, all of those elite athletes combined could only muster 159 total yards against him. How in the world does he do it? It comes down to one phrase: hang time. Stout doesn't just kick the ball far down the field. He kicks it incredibly, unnaturally high. He suspends the football in the atmosphere for roughly 4.5 to 5 full seconds. Paint a picture in your mind of what that is actually like for a punt returner. You are standing all alone on an island. You are staring straight up into the blinding stadium lights, trying to track a wildly spiraling piece of leather in the freezing rain, while two 215-pound gunners, defensive backs sprinting at 20 miles per hour, are bearing down right at your chin. That massive hang time gives the coverage team an absolute eternity to get downfield and literally build a brick wall around the returner before the ball even arrives. He forces fair catches, he induces the sheer panic of a muffed punt, he creates a wall of absolute silence around the return game.
And all that physics and hang time translates perfectly into the ultimate truth-teller metric for any punter, 41.2. This is his net average, 41.2 yards per punt. Now, if you aren't familiar, net average takes the gross distance of the kick and subtracts the return yardage and any touchbacks. It is the absolute holy grail of special team statistics because it tells you exactly, down to the inch, how much actual, realized field position was taken from the opponent. A net average of 41.2 yards proves that his kicks don't just go far, they completely neutralize the return game. They erase the opponent's special teams entirely from the equation. He is effectively taking the line of scrimmage, picking it up, and moving it over 40 yards down the field guaranteed every single time he steps onto the turf. In a game defined entirely by inches, having a guaranteed 41 yards of flipped field in your back pocket is a devastating structural advantage.
Let's pull back for a second and see how this builds into a massive scale issue for the Giants' opponents this upcoming season.
We've looked at the isolated numbers of the player, but now we have to look at the cascading effect this has on the entire team ecosystem. Look at this stark, undeniable contrast from last year. It is a tale of two entirely different franchises living in two different realities. Last season, following a punt, the Giants' opponents enjoyed an average starting field position of their own 27.8-yard line. That was the second worst mark in the entire National Football League, trailing only the New Orleans Saints. The Giants were practically handing out free yards on a silver platter. They were making life incredibly frustratingly easy for the opposing offense. Now look at the Ravens, armed with Jordan Stout. The Ravens ranked 9th in the league, consistently ruthlessly pinning opponents back at their own 22.5-yard line. That is a 5.3-yard discrepancy on average every single time the ball changes hands via a punt. And look, I know what the casual fan sitting on the couch might be thinking. It's just 5 yards, what's the big deal? Why does 5 measly yards warrant a $12 million contract?
I'll tell you why. Because that 5-yard difference is absolutely vital. It is the invisible force that wins and loses championships. Moving an opponent just a little bit deeper into their own territory forces them to string together a legitimate, mistake-free, 10-play drive just across midfield. It is the literal difference between a quick, explosive scoring strike and forcing the opposition to play agonizing, grinding defense on the other side of the 50-yard line. Think deeply about the psychology of an offensive coordinator when his unit is backed up inside their own 25. The playbook instantly shrinks. You literally cannot run deep, developing pass concepts because your offensive line simply doesn't have the physical space to retreat into a deep pocket without stepping out of the back of the end zone. But even more importantly, think about what this does for the Giants' defense. When an opponent is pinned deep, the defensive coordinator can unleash his most terrifying, aggressive, exotic packages. They can run cover one press man. They can completely load the box. Elite pass rushers like Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux don't have to worry about dropping back or defending deep crossing routes. They can simply pin their ears back, ignore everything else, and launch themselves violently at the A and B gaps. Those 5 yards of hidden field position literally dictate the entire rhythm of the pass rush. By bringing in Stout, the Giants aren't just marginally improving their special teams, they are directly, forcefully buffing their entire defensive line.
And all of this brilliantly illustrates the final, most crucial element of Stout's game: his surgical, machine-like precision. In the high-stakes, hypercritical pressure cooker environment of the New York media market, the ultimate goal for any specialist is to never, ever be talked about. You only end up on the back page of the New York Post if you shank a kick, suffer a blocked punt, or execute a catastrophic failure that cost the team a massive win. Operating in those shadows without a single mistake requires a level of consistency that borders on the robotic. And this is where the true, undeniable artistry of the position shines. Over his 4 seasons and 68 games with Baltimore, Jordan Stout pinned opponents inside the 20-yard line an unbelievable 100 times. 100 separate times an opposing offense had to walk out onto the field, look at their own goalpost right behind them, and realize their backs were completely against the wall. And compared to those 100 successful pins, he recorded a mere 24 touchbacks. Now understand this, a touchback is a massive missed opportunity for a punter. It's when you try to pin them deep, but the ball violently bounces into the end zone, giving the opponent a free pass out to the 20-yard line. Stout's ratio of 100 pins to just 24 touchbacks is phenomenal. It means he isn't just kicking it as hard as he can and praying for a lucky bounce. He is aiming. He is dropping the football into a tiny bucket from 50 yards away. He is completely mastering the coffin corner, that vanishing art of putting extreme, unnatural backspin on a football so it hits the turf and just completely dies exactly at the 7-yard line before stepping politely out of bounds.
This phenomenal ratio, backed by a massive, undeniable body of work, is what you're paying for. 231 career punts, nearly 11,000 total career punt yards, a 47.5-yard career average across 4 grueling seasons. This shows a player who shapes the football exactly how he wants, every single time. And more importantly, it shows immense, unshakable mental fortitude. Think about the playing conditions in the AFC North where he came from. The freezing, sleeting rain of late December football, the intense, suffocating pressure of Sunday night football with millions watching. The center suddenly snaps the ball high. A free rusher is coming completely unblocked off the edge, screaming toward him. And yet, his mechanics remain completely flawless. He possesses not just the raw, explosive power, but the delicate touch and the extreme environmental awareness to control the trajectory of the ball under chaotic circumstances that would cause most players to completely panic. That level of cold, calculated control is an elite, premium skill set that most NFL franchises spend decades endlessly searching for.
Which brings us to the ultimate truth of the upcoming season for the New York Giants. The greatest measure of Jordan Stout's success in 2024 won't be Pro Bowl votes, it won't be flashy highlight reels on social media, and he certainly won't have custom jerseys flying off the shelves in the team store. No, The greatest measure of his success will be absolute, deafening silence from the critics. As the old special teams adage goes, and as Harbaugh knows well, the more he's able to operate in anonymity, the better job he is doing. Because a completely mistake-free punter operates completely in the shadows. If the notoriously brutal New York sports media goes the entire season without mentioning his name even once, it means he has flawlessly executed his mission. It means he is completely mistake-free. It means every single Sunday, he is quietly, methodically backing opposing offenses into a dark corner, locking the door, and letting the Giants' defensive line completely feast. He is the ghost in the machine, a silent assassin operating entirely in the margins.
And it leaves us with this final, provocative thought as we look toward kickoff. In a sport entirely defined by flashy superstars, by multi-million-dollar quarterbacks and highlight reel wide receivers, in a game that is ultimately, historically decided by inches, by mere fractions of a second, is the most indispensable player on the entire Giants roster, the one we're desperately hoping we never have to talk about? Will Jordan Stout's silent, suffocating dominance be the invisible force that tips the scales, breaks the will of opposing offenses, and literally saves the Giants' season? Time will tell, but the numbers absolutely do not lie. Thank you so much for diving deep into the film room with us today on NFL Nexus. If you appreciated this cinematic explainer of the game's hidden mechanics, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Give this explainer a like and head down to the comments. I really want to hear from you. How many actual wins do you think elite field position is truly worth over a grueling 17-game season? Let's get a debate going down there. And don't forget, you can support the channel directly and get access to exclusive extended film room breakdowns by becoming an NFL Nexus channel member today. We couldn't make these massive deep dives without you. Until next time, keep your eyes on the margins, because that is where the game is truly won.